Welcome to Art by Rick. I'm Rick. We've been on a little bit of a hiatus, a little bit of a kind of a missing in action type thing. Nutmeg TV's been going through a remodeling, so we haven't had access to the studios to do any editing, so we haven't done any new shows. But I'm glad to say everything's finished and we're now back on track. So I thought we would start again by showing you a painting that I'm going to do that's a little different. Now, a little bit of a background. I'm usually talking to other artists at different places that I go, and one of the things that we talk about is abstract painting, which is what I do. Now, my favorite medium is a 16 by 24 or 16 by 20 canvas. I like that size because it's easy to maneuver if I'm doing an acrylic pour, or if I'm painting something, it fits nice on an easel. I could do it while it's laying down on a table. I can do it while it's standing up on the easel itself. It's a nice size to work with. But historically, when you're doing abstract painting, it seems the ones that actually attract a lot of attention are those paintings that are big. So in this show, I'm going to call it Going Big. Now, I'm going to tell you how we're going to do this, and this is going to be kind of interesting. Now, first of all, I have here a package of 16 by 20 canvases. As I said, this is my favorite size. I like to use this size a lot. These are raw canvases. These have not been sealed, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to take the canvases out, and I'll show you how I begin the setup in setting up the canvas, and then what I'm going to do to make the canvas big. Now, going big is sometimes a challenge. I mean, you can go to your local hobby store and buy a large canvas. You have to be careful because the larger the canvas, the more there's a chance that it might warp as the paint dries and begins to shrink. So sometimes you've got to go with a thicker canvas, something that's built on maybe a 1x1 frame, and that could get quite expensive. And then, of course, the big problem with a solid, large canvas is transporting it. I mean, how do you fit it in your car? You know, I mean, unless you have a van or a truck or some way to be able to move that painting around, it's difficult when it's really, really large. So I was giving it some thought, and I was trying to think, you know, how can I have a large canvas to do a large abstract painting on, going big, but still be able to transport it or move it with my car, or be able to set it up somewhere without having to have a lot of artificial aid, let's say, to get this painting hung. But I regress. Let me go back to talking about my 16 by 20 canvases. Now, I buy these at a local hobby shop. They're 5 canvases to a package. They're relatively inexpensive. Now, of course, when you're buying canvases, the more expensive of a canvas that you buy, the more of a better result you're going to have for a painting. But I find that these work just fine for what I do. They come, as I said, they come 5 to a package. They're wrapped individually in individual plastic to keep them nice and, you know, safe. They actually pack these in such a way where you have some wrapped ones and then you have some unwrapped ones. This one happens to be unwrapped, so I'm probably going to use this one here. And as you go along, you basically can set your canvases up or do what you want to do with them. So here we go. Here's an unwrapped 16 by 20 canvas. This is going to be my star. This is going to be the base of what I'm going to be working with here. And now what I want to do is I want to seal this canvas with an acrylic gesso. That's a paint, a sealant, that you put on the canvas that gives your acrylic paints or whatever kind of painting you're going to do a better surface to adhere to. It's real easy to do. It's real simple to coat the canvas. You can buy canvases unfinished like this one. You can buy them already coated. But in this case, I'm going to do this one. And what I've learned in doing gesso seal on this is as it dries, because I seal the edges of the canvas, if I have it flat on my table here, it's going to stick to the table, and I have to, use a putty knife or something like that to putty it up. So what I do is I use these little paper cups, and you've seen me use these cups on the show before. This is what I mix some paints in to use to do acrylic pours or dump on the canvas or whatever to do. So what I do is I take 4 cups, and just excuse my reach here. I'll take the 4 cups, and I'll use these 4 cups to prop up the canvas to keep it off the table. So just real simple, just leaving it here. And then I'll take my acrylic or my gesso, my sealant, which I have here in this bucket, and I'm going to use this to seal the canvas. So I use a basically 1-inch brush. This is just an older brush that I use, and I'll dip it into the acrylic gesso. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to apply this onto the canvas. And what I do is I do kind of a zigzag motion on it, because what I'm trying to do is get as much coverage as I possibly can on the canvas. And I'll go back and forth to try and get this as covered as best I can. Now, again, the purpose for doing this is to give your paints something that's something that the paint can adhere to. It's a good idea to take your time doing this. You don't have to put a really thick coat on. You can put a really thin coat onto the canvas itself. It's not really something that you need to put on really, really heavy. I've actually used this sealant as kind of a modeling paint. In other words, I can put it on really, really thick and let it go on in such a way where I can have some depth to my paintings. It will dry pretty quickly, so you can have your paints adhering to it. Now, one of the challenges with this is you're painting white acrylic sealant or gesso, most likely on a white canvas. So that gives you the challenge of seeing your coverage. My little trick, as I explained in one of my shows, is I put it on my table where I have my ceiling light in such a position where it reflects on the canvas itself. So you can't see this on camera, but basically I can see where the gesso is on the canvas and how it's covered the canvas. And if I've missed any spots, I can go back and kind of blend it in and allow myself to make sure that I have this canvas completely covered. Now, once I get the front part of the canvas covered, I just basically kind of go along and do the edges just to get the edges sealed. I don't know, there's a school of thought as to whether or not you really need to seal the edges of the canvas. I like to seal the edges because sometimes when I do an acrylic pour, the paint is going to drool or run off the canvas itself to give me a finished look. So I like to make sure that everything is uniform, that the canvas is sealed all the way around on all 4 edges, and that my paint's going to be able to adhere no matter what part of the canvas it happens to be on. So again, I'm just sealing the edges up just by putting some of the gesso on and just smoothing it onto the edges. I'll come around here and I'll do a little bit on the front just to make sure that that's nice and covered. And again, I'm just kind of making sure that my canvas is completely covered. And I'll go up and down and I'll go back and forth, and again, just making sure that it's covered. And this looks like it's pretty well covered. So now the next stage is to just take this sealed canvas now and put it aside so that it's going to dry. Now, putting it aside to dry, I have what I call a drying table. You've seen on Art by Rick the different tables that I work with. I'm actually doing this on my work table. I have another table that's set in front here, which I use to do my preparation work on. Sometimes I paint on it. Sometimes it's the base stand if I'm setting up my spinner where I'm going to do a spin painting. But I also have another table of about equal height that's right behind me here that allows me to kind of pick up the canvas that I've just sealed and put it on the side here so it has a chance to dry. And I'm going to take the cups that I used to put the canvas up, and I'm going to make sure that I put this canvas up on these cups so that as it dries, it's not going to stick to the surface of my table. So that's basically what I'm doing here, is I'm just putting it up on the cups. All right, so that canvas has been sealed. It's now going to sit about 30 minutes, maybe 40 minutes or so to allow it to dry, because then it becomes a canvas that I can prepare to do my painting on. Now, this show is called Going Big. So that's a 16 by 20 canvas. So the size that I wanted to do was I wanted to do a canvas that, was maybe 4 feet wide by 6 feet deep, 4 by 6. A nice wall-sized canvas. Something big enough that I could put on a big blank wall, maybe behind a couch, or that could be a focal point on an accent wall as you walk into a room, but something nice and big. And the problem with big paintings is you can get, well, it's not a problem. It's a little more challenging in that you can be a little bit more aggressive with it because you don't have to get too involved with details. Unless you're going to do a scenery on a big scale, you really don't have to be too particular about what you're doing. Now, the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to take these 16 by 20 canvases and I'm going to put these canvases together. Now, how am I going to do that? Well, what I did is I used a little bit of construction technique and some of my experience in building things over the years to try to figure out how to latch these individual canvases together to make a canvas that's very large. And the way that I did that was I was able to take the canvases, seal several of them. I actually have 9 of these canvases that I've sealed, figure out how I wanted to spread them out to link them together, and then how to link them together. So what I did is I went over to my local home improvement store and I bought some slat boards, just simple boards like this. This one I believe is a popular wood. It has some grains in it, so I recommend that if you're going to use a board like this, you have to pre-drill first before you add your screws, because if you don't, trying to screw through this, sometimes if you hit a vein, you're going to split the wood, and that makes a different challenge. But I went out and I bought several of these, and I laid down my 16 by 20 canvases and tried to figure out how to use these boards as a way of linking the canvases together so that I can make one big canvas and go really, really big. So let me show you what I did and what it looks like when it's all together. So I've had to move a couple of things around here. So through the magic of television, I shut the camera off and kind of move some things. I had to get my work table out of the way, move my drying table back, move my preparation table to the side to give myself a big enough space, not only to do this painting, but to also show you what I did. So again, I started with a simple 16 by 20 canvas, this size canvas. And I showed you how I laid it on my table and I sealed it with the acrylic gesso in order to have a nice adhering surface to be able to, for the paint to stick to the canvas itself. And then I laid out these canvases in a pattern to give me something that was at least 4 feet by 6 feet as far as size is concerned. And then I had to fasten these canvases together. So what I ended up with is I ended up with this here. I don't know if you can see this. I'll hold it up. It's going to take up the whole camera. But this is basically 9 canvases put together And I put them together using that wood that I showed you. In this particular case here, if I could spin this around, and again, it's a rather large canvas and I don't have enough space to really show you the full size. But if you look at the back of this, you can see that I took the boards and I used the boards to kind of put the canvases together so that they're all screwed together to make one big piece. And this was put together in such a way where I can hang it horizontally or vertically, depending on which way the painting comes out. Now, one of the things I want to mention about doing this particular technique is you have a little bit of a challenge in that if you don't use enough boards to really fasten this in such a way where it's going to be really solid, it's going to be kind of wobbly. So I made sure that I put it together in such a situation where it's pretty solid. It's not going to go anywhere because I want to be able to hang it up. I also constructed this in such a way where I have little tab boards that connect 3 sections together. This is 9 separate 16 by 20 canvases, and I put them together 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then screwed them together vertically and horizontally. Strategically, I can take the 3 sections apart, so I have 3 separate little sections. And this allows me to take this canvas and transport it, as I said, very easily. I can slide the pieces right onto the back seat of my car, bring them wherever I want to bring them, lay them back down, screw it all back together, and hang it as one big piece. Now, you're probably thinking, since I'm standing behind this thing and it's a wall, and you can't really appreciate the size of this thing, I'll try and hold it up again. Basically, it takes up the whole screen. Can't see me. Here I am. To paint on this, I don't have a table big enough to work on. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to lay this down on the floor and do my painting while it's laying on the floor. Now again, that presents some challenges. The style of painting that I'm going to do with this very, very large canvas in this show called Going Big is I'm going to do a drop and splatter and kind of a smearing technique. Now I'll use several tools to do that. I'm going to use Mother Nature, gravity, to help me spread the paintings. It's going to take a lot of paint. So I'm not going to be able to do the painting all in one show. I'll probably start it on our next show to show you the technique that I'm doing and talk about it. And then I'll finish it off camera and then I'll show you the reveal when it's done. One of the challenges though is I can't do what I call an acrylic pouring technique, which is what I'm known for and what I like to do. In a pouring technique, you're mixing your paints with a medium to thin the paint, maybe a little bit of water. You're pouring the paint on the canvas, and then you're maneuvering the canvas in order to allow the paints to spread all over the canvas in different designs and different shapes and different things you're doing. I could do that if this were one big solid canvas. It would be a little bit of a challenge to maneuver it because of the size, but I could do that. But because these are individual little canvases that are screwed together, I have seams here. I don't know if the camera can pick that up, but you have the seams between the different canvases. So an acrylic pour would not really work for this idea or this particular type of painting that I'm going to do. Because what would happen is the paint would pool in the crevices and you'd end up with a painting that wouldn't have a really nice flow to it. It would be all lined and it just would not come out right. You'd have to do one solid canvas. You can buy canvases this big. You're going to spend a little bit of money in order to get a canvas this size, especially a stressed canvas. But again, as I've mentioned before, you're going to have a transport issue as to how to move that canvas or get it to your studio in order to paint it on. So in this case here, as I said, 16 by 20 canvases. I bought some poplar wood. I got some screws, I pre-drilled some holes, I placed all the canvases together, I screwed them together to make one big canvas and built it in such a way where I can take it apart and transport it in 3 sections and then put it together at whatever site I'm going to display it in pretty easily without necessarily trying to bring it all in one particular piece. These big canvases do get kind of heavy, so that's another reason why I chose to do it this way, because I can transport the pieces easily and they're a lot lighter and easier for me to maneuver. You just have to remember that you got to number your canvases, because when you take this apart, you want to put it back together the way that you designed it. You don't want to forget which section goes where, and then you end up mixing up the whole painting that you put together. So on the next Art by Rick show, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this large canvas. Again, let me hold it up for you so that you can see it. These are 9 16 by 20 canvases that are screwed together in such a way where, as I said, and I don't mean to keep repeating myself, but I can take these apart. And I'm going to take this whole canvas and I'm going to lay it down on the floor in my studio to do a drop type painting where I'm going to be dropping paint onto the canvas and then using different techniques to move that paint around or smear that paint or make different designs. I might use some stenciling because I have a lot of canvas here to cover. So it's going to take a lot of paint. It's going to take a lot of time to do. I will dedicate the next show of Going Big, Part 2, and showing you how I'm going to do the painting, and you can follow along with me. If you do decide to get creative and do something like this, let me just tell you that you've got to think it out, because it's not easy in figuring out what or how to put these canvases together in such a way where you can transport them easily and be able to keep them together in such a way that the painting makes kind of sense. There are other canvases you can do. I actually prepared another group of canvases where I used 24 by 30 size canvases and put 4 together. That gave me basically a different setup, and I'll show you real quick what that looks like. This again was the same idea. These are 24 by 30 canvases. I took these canvases and I put them together with a wood frame to make them all one piece. But again, I have the seams that I have to deal with the canvas when I'm painting, and I'll do something on this one at a later date. You could even just take 2 canvases and put them together. You can put 16 by 20, put 2 together. You don't have to necessarily screw them together. You can do a couple of canvases. Sorry, I went off camera there. You can do a couple of canvases and do them where you're matching them together, and then you got to strategically hang them on the wall where they come together. I've done multiple canvases where I have like a theme, where I'll have 4 or 5 canvases that are the same theme that I'll hang in a row. I think I've shown you those on Art by Rick before, but there's a number of ways different to do it. So, in closing, 16 by 20 canvases, I took 9 of them, I sealed them with the acrylic gesso, I put them down on the floor, I laid them out to make my pattern, I screwed them together with a bunch of boards to make one big large canvas, and the next time on Art by Rick, I'll show you how I prep that, lay it down on the floor, and then we'll begin our painting so that we can make abstract painting and actually go big. My name is Rick, and this is Art by Rick. Stay tuned for the painting. That will be coming up on the next show. I'll see you soon.
Sometimes life just happens. Don't worry. Farmington Motorsports will get you back on the road and at a fair price. From towing to tires, emissions to transmissions.
Our ASC certified techs do it all.
Farmington Motorsports is a family-run business. We're a Napa Auto Center and AAA approved. We work on all makes and models from preventative maintenance to major repairs.
And every repair is backed by our 2-year, 24,000-mile nationwide warranty.
When life happens to you, don't worry. Farmington Motorsports.